a lot of the things I'm having trouble with in PvP right now.
Okay. So how would you sum that up? Like main issues going on.
Defending my third base, because I often feel I take it like a little bit too greedy. But I see like pro players take it very fast all the time. So I think I can do the same, but apparently I can't.
Just like immortal stalker sentry timings, or are we talking like charge lot attacks and stuff getting it?
No, we're just talking about a sentry stalker most of the time. Sometimes we'll bring in a model.
Okay.
But they'll just build more units early game than me.
Yeah.
Because I tend to play really greedy. And then the other thing is just like late game Archon engagements. I never know how to get an advantage in PvP that's big enough to win me the game. Like in PvT, PvZ, the win conditions are very clear to me. Like get that unit composition and then do that and whatever. But in PvP, it's just, well, I have an army. What do I do with it?
Yeah. I feel you on that one. All right, cool. So that'll be a lot of what we kind of work on today. Just quickly double checking. I'm pretty sure the audio and everything is fine. Guys on chat, you should be able to hear. Yeah, it looks fine. Let me double check. Can you keep talking?
Yeah, test.
Yeah, it looks good. Awesome. Thanks, heaps, man. Okay, cool. So let's take a look through this replay. Standard core scout. This is a bigger map, so scout's going to get there a little bit late. And this is a good example of one of these games where we see someone who's being a greedy douchebag on his part, right?
Yeah.
So this is a really good chance to pylon block if you do scout a little bit earlier.
Right, yeah, I missed it
just
just barely. I was attempting to actually, but I didn't manage to in time.
It's kind of hard because you wouldn't have had the information because you're, I think, or did you?
Well, I saw the probe going down, so I just barely missed it. Like, yeah, it was pretty tight.
Ideally, you would go into the main and like, because people that do this often they're really lazy and they won't even fake units on the gateways. But if you ever like go in and then you see the gateways like just start now as you go in, you're like, wait a second, fuck, get back down there. He's actually just building zealots. Probably he's gonna, he's just queuing up 2 zealots to make it look like he's building units the whole time, and he's actually probably got a probe down there trying to put down a nexus. So, maybe we could scout a little bit earlier to make sure we can, slow down someone going for a nexus like this. Alternatively, you can not worry about it, and you can of course just cancel your own 2 stalkers and go straight for the nexus yourself. Or just drop your own nexus right afterwards, and it's not like you're massively behind or anything. Just a very slight little efficiency thing. What do you think you prefer? Scouting maybe slightly earlier, like after the second gate goes down?
I guess like on some maps we could do this, right? Like Mech Depot, as you said, a pretty large map. But I think on maps like Abyssal or Interloper, I'm probably just fine with a regular Cybernetics Core Scout.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're happy to just kind of vary it and you think you'll remember it on the bigger maps, then let's do it. Yeah. All right, let's do that.
Also, I mean, with this build, like this is a 2-stalker expansion, right? And we're also having constant probes. And most builds that take an earlier nexus, like this guy, like will cut probes in order to get out some units. So I guess I won't be too far behind on the probe count anyways.
Not really, nah.
Yeah.
But you are keen to send a slightly early scout on these big maps just so you can sometimes mess that up? Yeah? Okay. Probe scout after second gate. That should be early enough, I think. Alright. Cool. Weird. Anyway. Okay, cool. So you come through, you see everything that's going on. Probe production, you've seen the nexus.
I'm a little bit late on sending my probe down here because I'm not used to the nexus timing quite yet.
Not too bad, it's fine. Okay. Stalkers are going to take a little poke. Okay, so your Robo's down and a nice fast Twilight as well. You've got 4 Stalkers, cool. And you can make 2 sentries, cool. So this is an example of a game where you could skip those next two stalkers, I guess, if you wanted to just get two adepts out for a little bit of delayed pressure, perhaps, when something is happening later. Or you could try and get your sentries out faster for an earlier hallucinate scout, simply because you know your opponent can't be aggressive when he's gone for such a fast expand. So these are just options popping into my head. But Robo finishes, you can go Warp Prism first, which is, of course, going to work out just fine. Blinks on the way, non-stop pro production, and ooh, a very early third base. Okay, very nice. If you get away with that, it's fantastic. It is, yeah, it is quite well timed, though. I think since you know he's gone for a fast expand, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, like the notes you sent me said that like as you start to saturate your natural, which happens quite fast with this build, right? Because we have constant pro production in the early game.
Yeah.
As you get saturated, you get the third base. So I was just doing that. But
No
it feels,
worries.
I don't know, it feels a little risky sometimes. Like you'll see the stalkers march across the map and actually cancel the third base, which sucks pretty hard.
Yeah, I was thinking like kind of get the gases on the natural as well, and kind of as they're getting saturated, take the third. Obviously, you know, sorry, I didn't have super crystal clear notes. I kind of just wrote up the build quickly in email for you, but yeah, with this sort of pressure, I mean, his pressure is almost, it's kind of fortuitous. Like, he didn't even know about the Nexus, and he's just, I don't think, and he's just like, okay, let's go over here, and actually kills that, which is really nice for him. So right as Blink's finishing, 9 stalkers, yeah. Yeah, okay, so I think take the gases on the natural first, and get into that immortal production. You did build an observer, right? Oh, you actually built 2 observers. Oh, okay, wow. And so did
I'm like
he.
super paranoid because of DTs all the time.
I feel like because of hallucination, you don't need to be. As long as you're really good at microing your hallucinate scout, you can usually tell if they're going DTs or if there's something missing. Obviously, they can still proxy it, but even then, like, it's only a small percentage, I think, where that's going to actually get into a spot. Your observer's going to be way on the other side of the map. So, especially since you got a Warp Prism going across quite early as well, I think getting an Immortal out very fast is really nice, because when you're going to be playing even a less greedy third in this, but any nice fast third, having Immortals as a much more efficient unit against Blink Stalkers is going to be so helpful for you. So I think we should, yeah, write down a couple of these notes.
So are we talking like 1 Immortal before the third base, or just take the gases, get the third base, and then produce an Immortal?
I think non-stop robo production should always be a key. So I'm not sure the exact order that things will come out. And of course, it kind of depends on how the early game goes a little bit. But what we're going to say is only 1 observer at first, at least. You could add another a bit later. Constant robo production. So straight into Immortals. And of course, 3rd and 4th gas before 3rd Nexus. There is always this point, right, when you'd be going for that 3rd base, which is, let's say about here, maybe a little bit earlier, where it is always a little bit like, okay, is he going to be trying to push me right now? What's going on? But yeah, I think basically from about 6 minutes onwards, you'd be kind of, my natural's fully saturated, maybe even a little bit earlier than this, 5:30 onwards, let's say, you'd be kind of going to yourself, all right, is he taking a 3rd? Like, if not, I still would like to take a 3rd whenever I have the money for it, but I've really got to keep my eyes open. Like, you know, especially if it gets past 6 minutes, there's no 3rd down. So you've got to keep kind of checking your opponent's 3rd, either that or checking their base and just seeing if there's a gateway explosion. And the big reason for that, of course, is, you know, if you're going to 3rd base off only 2 gateways, then that's, 2 or 3 gateways, then that's quite greedy. I think maybe we should always have a 3rd gateway before 3rd base. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a nice kind of safety measure, right?
Yeah.
Because I just keep losing my 3rd base to like 2 stalkers walking across the map, literally.
I think with the slightly delayed Nexus and an Immortal already coming out, you're going to find it is a lot easier to hold on. Force Fields and Guardian Shield also gain so much value once you've got Immortals out with them. But yeah, but definitely I think a 3rd gateway, just as a general, like, let's at least get a little bit of production up here. Let's not be too greedy, I think is a good idea. But at this point, yeah, there is always like a lot of scouting going on. So I guess from 5:30 onwards, this is kind of the onwards. What are you doing? So you're looking for a 3rd. You're scouting their third, and you're also scouting their bases. Now, if they make 5 gateways, make a lot of blink stalkers, and try to kill your third, you should still be able to defend that, I feel, with 3 gate and like a well-timed balanced third. It'll be close, it'll be micro-oriented, but you should be able to, especially with potential of overcharge coming in, right? What you can't defend is if they go 7 or 8 gateways, if they skip gases on their natural, or they just take the gas but never mine from it. So that's something else. Do you find yourself checking the gas on their natural at all?
Yeah, like always.
Good.
Pretty much.
Just making sure.
Like the first hallucination scouts just tries to check for the tech in the main base and then goes straight to the natural to see if they have the gases, and then the second hallucination usually just checks for the third base and where their army is, basically.
Good.
I do have one question though.
Yeah.
Like, recently, it might be because the pros have been just doing it a lot, but people are just taking like ridiculously fast third bases. Do you think I might like fall behind if I do it a little bit safer and the other guy is just, I don't know, taking his like 430 third base?
430?
Is there anything I could do in this and check his third base? I think it was quite fast, like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think this was like 520 or something. Let's take a look here.
Not entirely sure, but like, is there anything I could or I should do, or should I just be fine with just okay? I can just play macro from here.
So I think I'm not sure if I mentioned in the email, but there is definitely like the option of having like a built-in pressure on your opponent's third, and I feel like it's a good way to play, especially if you're having trouble in the matchup. Maybe once you get like a bit more comfortable, you're like, okay, this is only good on this map or in this situation. But it could be good to just always go with a 1 immortal, 2 sentry, 7 stalker pressure or something like that, and just move over to your opponent's third base, because that way it kind of gives you a little bit of momentum. It focuses you on saying, hey, if you're taking a greedy third, I'm going to punish it. It's basically this sort of move he's doing. And combined with the warp prism, it actually makes the warp prism super powerful. So even if your opponent's only on 2 base or something, just threatening the front, often you'll open up a moment there. You can do cool things. So let's say he's on the third, suddenly you're in the defensive position. So he's here defending his third, right? Your army comes down, and the thing is, if he doesn't see you coming, you can just walk up, get the better force fields, and just win the engagement. Like, we know how bullshit force fields can be if you just like trap his immortal and sentries or something like that. Like, if your opponent doesn't spot you coming in this stage of PvP, it's like, whoa, force fields just won the game, great. Mothership Core's not in position to overcharge, bam, third's dead. But not only that, your warp prism could be on the other side, and you could unload your 2 adepts here, have 2 more adepts warped in, and often I'll do this if I'm like, well, he's at his third, he's got the units, whatever. I'm literally just going to move up just to show my force, and then I shade 2 adepts in there while dropping 2 adepts in there, and it's just a, hey, I'm poking so I can actually snipe down a whole bunch of probes, and my main army is literally just going to show itself and then run straight home, because I'm not actually warping in with my army, because my warp prism is not with it, and I know my army is actually weaker than his. But I know he's probably, going to be afraid of it. It's very doubtful he's going to blink on top of an immortal, some sentries and stalkers. So I kind of do the 2-pronged harass combined with the fake attack at the front, if that makes sense.
So are we getting like any extra units then, aside from the initial 4 stalkers and the 2 sentries and I guess the immortals? Or are we just using the units that we have?
You'd probably warp in another round of stalkers. So you'd probably about 6 or 7 stalkers with the 2 sentries and the immortal. Yep.
But we stay on 3 gates, so like no extra production for that.
Yeah. So it's like a greedy pressure. Sometimes you can choose to commit more and do this more as like a real timing attack. Obviously, we've seen people do this even to 2 base opponents, where they go just like 3 gas, 6 gate, immortal, sentry, stalker. Sometimes they don't even get blink with it, and that stuff can work really well as well. But yeah, you're gonna do this more as like a, all right, I'm just moving out on the map with my 3 gate, and I'm just using it to potentially cancel the third, or to do a 3-prong pressure. Built-in pressure on the enemy third with 6 to 7 stalkers, immortal, and 2 sentries. Now you can bring the prism and reinforce this, even having 4 to 5 gates to really commit. So maybe you see something weird from your opponent. You're like, no, I know I can kill your third. Like, I know I want to commit. Or it's a meta thing based on your opponent, because he just doesn't build a lot of units and he's really greedy. So you can bring the prism, or you can do the other one. or you can do Adept drop in the main, Adept shade into the natural, and the attack on the third is just show your army and then run the fuck away before he realizes it's not much of an army.
Alright.
Cool. So those are two ways of making sure you do something at that stage. So let's look back at this game and let's kind of talk about this situation. So in this one, obviously your economy is not quite where you would have liked it to be because of losing the third. From here though, you've gone into double upgrades, which is cool. I haven't really thought about double upgrades. Is this more common in pro meta at the moment? I haven't watched too many PvPs.
Yeah, like Stats and Classic do this like every PvP. So I just kind of adapted it because I think it's really good.
Makes sense for Zealot counterattacks because it often ends up being so much about just Zealot versus Zealot, right? And every armor upgrade cancels every attack upgrade out for Zealots because they've got the 2 attacks. So the more skirmishes, the more counterattacks, that's going to be really valuable. Obviously, armor upgrades aren't going to help your Zealots too much against Archons, things like that, but they'll still add something.
What do you think on armor versus plasma shield upgrades? Because like in the end, it's gonna be mass Archon versus mass Archon, right? Like that's the kind of composition you're shooting for, and I mean armor does armor does pretty much nothing for Archons.
Yeah, I think there's a point where plasma shields does become more effective because it's more costly and it doesn't help things like Zealots as much. Obviously, Zealots only having 50 shields. I think it's something I'd probably follow the same philosophy as I do in PvZ with my double upgrade build, where it's like after +2 armor, I might as well add shields because it's going to take way less time to research and it's going to cost less than getting +3. And I'm hitting the point of the game where, hey, I've got 10 Archons in my composition. Getting 1 or 2 plasma shield upgrades is going to be really effective. But up to that point, I'm always just going to say, nah, let's get the cheaper upgrade that works better with Zealots, because usually the game gets swung in my favor or against me during that stage of the game. Maybe you like to swap into it after just +1 armor upgrade. I think that's a personal choice, but I don't think you ever want to rush to plasma shields because it's just too expensive.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so at this point in the game, everything's choked up a little bit. Now, you've got 2 prisms out there, which is pretty awesome. You're a little bit worried about him attacking you, though, so you haven't really found a moment to do like a big counterattack or anything like that. Just talk me through your thought process during this whole situation here.
So basically, like, I'm really bad at judging my opponent's army in PvP, and his just looked so much bigger than mine, so I just didn't like really try to move out. And the problem I have in PvP is once I kind of lose the initiative, like I did when I lost my 3rd base, I don't really try to be aggressive because I think I just have to defend all the time. Like I'm sending a couple of Zealots here to his 3rd base, but I mean it's not really doing anything. I'm not sure how to like get my tempo back in this case.
I think you definitely need to take a bit of a gamble at some point. Like right here, you're pinned back, right? Like he's right outside your base. It's really hard for you to say, yeah, now's a good time to go warp in 15 Zealots somewhere else on the map. Like it's hard to make that decision. I think sometimes you need to make it though. In these situations, of course, DTs as well are very, very powerful. I noticed you've actually skimped on your cannons, but you did have 2 observers out, and I think they're both on the defense. Yes, they are. So I can
my army and the other one with a mothership core.
Yeah, so that's actually a decent way of getting away with that. But definitely, I think at some point earlier you wanted to be trying to swing it in your favor that way. Use that positioning, right? It's mobility that's gonna get you back in the game. And to be fair, you were quite far behind in supply at some of these points. But let's take a look. So he actually only went single forge, at least initially. So that's part of why he had such a bigger army. Yeah. Especially if you invest in the double prism, I think it's like really important for you to do that. At this point, yeah, I think you should have probably already started investing in it. It's kind of tough, but trying to have like 10 Zealots out with your Warp Prism, I think would have been really sick. And trying to just do like right now when you see him in the middle of the map, the 10 Zealots already go in. Because up to this point you had a little bit of map vision, and you should be fighting for that map vision a lot with this sort of composition, because it's all about timing out those counterattacks, right? The main armies kind of posture at each other. Neither of you wants to attack into the other's concave, because all your chargelets will clump up and get obliterated by Archons. You want them to attack into you. If you're the one coming in with the flank or the surround, your army's way more efficient with chargelots, right? Way more efficient, which is why both of you don't want to attack here. But because he gets so much map control and position now, he's the one who starts making the decision of, you know what? I'm just going to split off a whole bunch of chargelots and make it really hard for you to pick the correct engagement. So it's going to happen in just a minute or two. Yeah. And this is where things get really difficult for you. So the other thing I really like to do is, yeah, like a big DT warp in whenever I'm behind like this. Especially when you get to this stage, you're like, oh, let's just warp in 6 DTs. And I'll like run them in from top side of the map into the natural. I'm not going to hit the third, right? You see his third is super well defended. It's got cannons, and it normally will be, because that's the point he expects you to counter. But the natural is usually a weak point. People don't watch it as much. You run in, snipe the cannon, run into the main with half of them as well, you know, and the DTs can kind of run rampant. So big DT warp-ins definitely have potential. Big charger counters definitely have potential. It's tough because your opponent's playing reasonably textbook in terms of just like, make big army, don't take terrible engage, control the map. But because he doesn't see those warp prisms on the edges, I think there definitely were opportunities to try and make it happen. The way you were playing it this game, it was pretty much all focused on just win that one frontal engagement, right?
Yeah.
So in this engagement, it looks like you do end up kind of routing him. Let's look back at that. So talk me through this engagement and your thought process here.
Well, I thought he at this point he was kind of clumped up, so I thought I might just go for it. And I was also pretty far ahead in upgrades, like 2-2 against only +2 attack. So I thought like maybe I might be able to do it. And then I just warped in like 11 more charge lots, and because you ran out of Archons eventually, like my charge lots were able to do really well.
It was a little bit of an awkward engagement though, right? Like the right-hand side there, you had about 5 Archons stuck at the back for a long time there. So whilst it does work out for you, it's because he didn't have a warp prism. If he had a warp prism here and he warped in charge lots as well, it would have been like at best a dead even fight, but I think it would have actually gone his way.
Well, I think he even brought a warp prism, but I sniped it. Maybe.
Oh.
I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Oh, you were clicking your
really offensively.
You were clicking your dudes really far forward. Oh yeah, right. Okay, that's why you went for it. Okay, I didn't notice that. Yeah, you were clicking on it. Okay, yeah, that kind of gives a better reason for why you engage there as well, right? Not only is he a bit clumped up, it's like, hey, warp prism is out front. Let's jump on it. Cool. I think definitely, yeah, could have found a better engage, and I think generally it's just looking for that flanking engage. This map's bloody awful for getting a single flank on your opponent. It's much better for sending big counterattacks because it is so choked up. So I think on a map like this, same with Abyssal, same with Interloper, you're going to be a little bit more confident sending big counterattacks, even though you're like, I don't really think I can defend with this army right now. But if I just sit here, we're both just going to max out and just wait for the other to take a worse engagement. Like, it's better to split off a bunch of units and get out there. So yeah, at this point, you got some momentum. And you're just going to go for one big frontal push, hey?
Yeah, that's the plan here. But I didn't expect him to have this. Like, I didn't expect the Stargate transition at all. This is, I guess, another one of my weaknesses, that I forget late game scouting a lot. So I didn't know about the carriers, the fleet beacon at all, and the mothership kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah. I think once again, it's okay to go for frontal attacks, but it's almost always better with this composition to be doing big counterattacks everywhere. So, you know, if you unloaded in his main and warped in 10 chargelots there, I would be so much happier than doing it this way. And
right, yeah.
I just think you could have achieved so much more if you did that. You then warp in Stalkers here, so you're obviously thinking, well, let's try and snipe the mothership core. This is going to be really dicey with only a single observer out, especially. But let's see how it goes.
Well, I mean, I just got cleaned up really badly, and
yeah,
I'll leave the game pretty much directly after that.
Alright, so I think a big focus on counterattacks is probably going to be the main thing, even when you feel like you're a little bit behind or under pressure. Say, hey, I've got to take a risk and do that, so... Bigger focus on counters. Just that classic army posturing at the front, the zealots counterattacking. It's a lot the same of how you kind of want to play Protoss vs Zerg in the rare case where they don't have creep all over the map and 4 billion Hydra Bane, and your army can actually posture and threaten a base while counterattacks are hitting. It's that what a lot of Protoss kind of claim is the mythical point of PvZ right now, right? But I think in PvP it's much easier. But yeah, it's really getting in the mindset of the melee army. Immortals and Archons, we like to, I think, when they're with charge lots, we like to think of them more as melee units and think of this as like, you know, it's about seeing where your opponent is. And if it comes to, you know, taking a frontal engage, it's about you see him coming, you spread your army, and you come in with the flank and jump on him and just stomp it, right? If he's not out on the map, bam, fantastic. Well, I'm going to do a big commitment over here. Everyone's got a cannon at each base, right? People don't have enough for 10 charge lots coming in. Very rarely do people have all the war pins ready. Bam, right then. You know, very rarely do people have enough damage output and detection to stop 6 DTs running into a base. So army posturing at the front, zealots counterattacking whenever possible. Huge, somewhat gambly counterattacks to get out of being behind. Whilst turtling and holding concave. Went behind. 6 to 8 DT warpins in late game to snipe cannons.
Right, now that you're mentioning
scales.
it, with the DTs and like, I guess just my infrastructure in general, like we've established a plan for up until I want to take the third base, right? But what should be the order after that? Like do I get the forges before the extra gates? When do I get the DT shrine? How many gates do I want? Like when do I get those?
I think DT Shrine will be quite a bit later. It really depends on your style. You know, if you want to rush the DTs, you can, but they are a bit gimmickier. It's like something where I think DT should just always come in once the game hits a certain point. Like you got 3 bases saturated, you can afford that. In terms of double forge, I was only thinking about single forge PvP earlier when we were talking. Do you want to load up another replay, by the way? We can get that up while we talk about this. And I'm just gonna. I liked the positioning of the forge in the build before. I think a lot of people rush their forge really fast. I'm
just wondering whether like I would want to at least get up to like 4 or 5 gates before I get the double forge, or if I just get them straight after the third bit with the 3 gates.
I think 100% you need 5 gateways before you go double forge. 100%, yeah. Unless you've got very special scouting info, of course. If you go for the push, go up to 5. Yeah. I feel like it's after you've got the third down. So it's like you go to a third gateway, you get the third, you go up to 5 gateways, and then you go double forge, Templar archives, and add the rest of your gateways. I think that sounds like.
Can you note that down? Like I'm probably gonna forget otherwise.
Yeah, it's the one in your email, but I can copy paste it.
Okay.
I'll copy paste it in your document as well anyway. Yeah, because otherwise next time we're coaching I'm totally gonna forget it anyway, so let me put that there. Okay. Build guidelines. Cool. Just for people in chat, in case you guys want kind of like the general opening that we've been doing, I'll be nice and share it to you guys as well. Just the little video that I linked to you on email earlier. Just basic 2 stalker expand, nothing too crazy. All right, cool. Yeah, I think that's a good order. All right, so talk us through this game.
Well, it's not so special. Basically, it's the same build. I go with a core scout again. It's a little bit weird because I only see 1 gate. So it's either like a really fast Nexus, or like a fast tech. And I actually made a mistake and didn't check for his gates, for the gases. If I clicked on the gases, I could have deduced that it's either a proxy or a Stargate. But I just didn't see the Nexus, so I could just assume either it's a proxy or like he.
If you go to your, if you look from your vision right now, you actually know it's not a proxy. Can you tell me how?
I'm not quite sure actually. Like he walled off the front, which is pretty suspicious.
There's 3 pylons though, right? I don't think he could have a third
I
pylon
guess,
down
yeah.
already.
I
Like,
guess, yeah.
if he had a fourth pylon, that would be some serious high-level mind games. And I say high level the way Day9 says it's high level to, you know, make a forge and then cancel the upgrade or something and then do a forgate, you know, like something like that.
Mind games.
Yeah, it's mind games, man. No, I think if you see this many pylons, you know it's going to be tech. But anyway, talk us through your
Okay.
reaction. If you do know it's a tech build like this, if you clicked on the gases, that already verifies.
You're attacking your probes. Watch your mineral
Yeah,
line.
how do you change up?
Well, I'm not changing anything up like too drastically here. I just like go scout for proxies because at this point, like I didn't actually realize he had 3 pylons there. I just made sure that I'm not getting like double proxy rowboat on one gate or I don't know, stuff like that. And then I just proceed to do the normal build. Like I get the Nexus, and I'll get the robo and the Twilight pretty soon after this as well.
Okay. I think maybe it's not worth. I don't know. It's weird, right? Part of me says it's probably not worth blocking the Nexus when they're on one gate, and then part of me says it is worth it because they're only going to have one gateway unit to knock it down. Because basically my thought process, and I'm still, you know, I'm not sure on this. Sorry guys on stream. There you go. You guys can see what's going on. My bad. Terrible streamer. Is basically you want to put all of your focus on being ready for any pressure that comes out while just taking your own clean, fast expand. I'm not sure. I don't really have a clear decision. I think it's okay.
Right.
I think it's okay, but we'll revisit it if this comes up later. Just food for thought for now. Pylon block versus one gate. Tech opening. I'm not sure if it's worth it. We'll think about that more later. Can kind of calculate that in different situations. Okay, cool. So he's done a whole lot of nothing.
Well, by now
here.
I know he's going Phoenix, because like he sent one Phoenix and actually used 2 overcharges to snipe it, which was probably not the best idea. But kind of went full greedy mode and wanted to get that first Phoenix.
I would do that. For sure. If the guy's like bam in between 2 pylons, like yeah. If you don't get it, it's definitely not worth it, right? But if you get the Phoenix,
Yeah.
I mean the first Phoenix is so important. So I think that's actually totally worth it. And you go
Right.
for a super
The
fast
reaction
third.
versus Stargate,
Yeah.
is usually just a super fast third because I don't think they can apply a lot of ground pressure with this, especially since you only had 1 gateway. And I'm just not getting the prism, which is where this faster third is mostly coming from.
Yeah. I mean, it's... How often do you see people just open up like this sort of fast Phoenix? This is like a Roddy build right here. A little bit weird. Haven't seen this one in a while.
I don't know, like I mean, it's not the most popular build, but you do see it sometimes. But this guy is like doing some serious, I don't know what this is, like, the model actually really freaked me out. Like, he's gonna attack my third, and I'm almost gonna lose it, because I'm not in position.
Yeah,
I
this...
just like kind of barely see the units with my observer there.
Your probes are getting wrecked.
I just like kind of abandon my probes in the natural, which is kind of tough right now. So I don't want to be losing probes with this, I think.
I think it's totally worth it though, right? Like it makes sense to do it. You have to go
Yeah, I
defend your
mean,
third, and he's
yeah.
doing some super weird shit right now. Like this is... Let's go Phoenix, but we're only going to build 3 of them and just go straight into Immortals and like my own Mega Fast third. And I'm going to do this like weird 2 Sentry to Immortal pressure. Very, very odd play from him. So what we saw there was a really messy fight, right?
Yeah.
Now you both missed macro during that. You're both like, "What the hell is going on?" But I mean, I think you just shouldn't have fought there. I think you could have waited, right? Your Nexus has a lot of hit points. I mean, I know it's Immortals. You can't wait a long time, but I feel like even maybe even pulling 5 probes over or something. I don't know, but basically just waiting for one more warp in might be the way to go. Of course, losing the pylon means the warp in will be at your natural. You probably had you had your 3rd and 4th gateway just finished. So if you transform them and warp them, I think you might have been able to do it, and maybe with a little bit of back and forth micro, you could have done this.
Right.
And I think you definitely, like going for force fields rather than Guardian Shield was the right choice. Unfortunately, they just weren't the best force fields from you. I feel like if you trapped him just a little bit better there, killed that Immortal and kind of backed off rather than continuing to fight, this would be a way better engagement for you.
Right, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and maybe let that Nexus get down to like 500 hit points. Like, obviously not, you know, make sure you can save it, but I reckon let the Nexus tank a lot more hit points there for sure. It's hard to make that decision under pressure, but I think next time you see someone do something like this is very peculiar. You know he's not going to have a lot of gateways reinforcing this. You know there's not going to be any strong follow-up to it because he's kind of opened up Phoenix, right? And he doesn't, you know, he's got the third, which you've seen, and all that sort of stuff, which is very odd. Now, what else would have made this easier, actually? Oh, okay, so you went 3 observers. Okay, because I'm like, shouldn't you have had more? Okay. Is this specifically because you didn't want to build Immortals because it was Stargate play? Why so many
Exactly.
observers?
Yeah, usually against Phoenixes I get more observers, so that I don't need to get as many stalkers because I can just move around with the Phoenixes together and then try to distract them.
Okay, I like the idea. Like, I love this observer out here, right? The one that spots the rotation of the Phoenixes. This is an awesome observer. I love this observer. But I think you only really need 1 observer out like that. I can totally see why you wouldn't expect this to come out as the follow-up from your opponent, though. So you were blindsided by it. But it does expose that maybe you are metagaming a little bit. Maybe you are saying, oh, you're going Stargate. I don't need to worry about the ground at all. And because you're skipping those Immortals, this little pressure from him is way harder to deal with than it should be. So,
Right, yeah.
what do you think? Maybe after getting rid of the first Phoenix, especially, not really dealing with any serious Stargate pressure yet, maybe you should have just kept focusing on the ground play game, since there was no real indication he was going to go more than 3 to 4 Phoenix anyway. Those Immortals are always going to be useful.
Yeah, I guess it's probably a better idea, right? It's easier to spend your money as well then, because the models, like, they do take a lot of resources to build.
Yeah. So let's just say 2 observers versus Phoenix. Maybe even only 1. Up to you. Maybe even only 1. Then still build Immortals. Unless he's really, you know, massing Phoenix. If he's gone super fast Phoenix, he's already got 5-6 Phoenix up. It's a little bit of a different scenario. But in this case, they hadn't really touched you. You killed the first one, etc., right? So you can go back to focusing on the ground fight, I think, quite a bit. Okay. Cool. So you got 1-1 on the way now, quite fast. You got a nice probe count. You did go 4 gateways this time, I believe, after 3rd Nexus, which is fine because it was a reaction to the Stargate. In future, we've said, okay, we'd probably get a 3rd gate, then the Nexus, you know, then go for these other things. Templar Archives. You've gone up to 4th and 5th gateway, 5th and 6th gateway, then Double Forge, then 7th and 8th gateway. Should be a Templar Archive soon, and then you're just kind of in full swing. Now, in terms of scouting,
Your probes are under attack.
you didn't scout too much. Obviously, it's hard with Phoenix. I guess, had you verified at this point that you knew he was just going for a standard composition as well?
I didn't.
Okay.
I just kind of gambled here, to be honest. Like, I find it hard to scout really well when they have Phoenixes.
It's pretty
Like,
tough.
I tried to send a couple of probes and adepts in the early game, but he picked them up all. So yeah, I wasn't quite sure. Just kind of like hoping that he would be going for like something meta-ish as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably wasn't the best thing to assume, like given how, like by how he played so far. But I don't. Yeah.
You could have sent an observer over, just try to see what the army looks like. I think that would have been a really good choice. He made a lot of stalkers here, which I find a little bit odd since he skipped on Blink. But he's got a beastly economy up, and he's way up in supply. I guess just the flow-on effect from that pressure. The Phoenix is picking up 10 probes over the course of this game, and he's just been super greedy behind all this, I suppose. This Phoenix opening. Now he's up at this huge economy. So talk us through your situation here. I mean, what were you thinking at this point? What's your goal?
So I was thinking that like maybe I could just apply some pressure at his third base, and then try to take a good fight. I was pretty confident after I saw he had this many stalkers, because that like for me that meant that he wouldn't have as many Archons. So I just continued with my normal game plan here, like get double upgrades, get a Stargate eventually for the Oracle, and then just like macro up. But I wasn't really planning on like doing any like huge kind of damage at this point, because I did feel a little bit like thrown off after I lost my third place again. Well, I guess I kept it, but like having that kind of weird engagement there.
Yeah, I mean, you lost pretty much all your stalkers in first few centuries, as well as Mothership Core. It does cost a lot, and it allowed the Phoenixes to do lots more damage. So definitely wasn't an awkward situation. So this is yet another game where you are behind. I do like that Zealot counter. And as you max out, let's kind of see how you use this army a little bit better than that last game, I hope. Okay. So Warp Prism's rotating. That's good. So main army posturing at the front. And I would love to see a big 30 Zealots on that left-hand side. A little bit of fear from you here. I feel like you could have held this area. What do you think?
Right. Yeah, I didn't quite know, like, and it was more important to me to focus my attention on the Warp Prism. So I could get this super, like, super big warp in, because I don't want to lose a fight because my army just stands there. And I didn't, like, focus on it enough. So I just kind of pulled it back. It's still, like, a little bit of a flashback from the Blink Disruptor days, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, fair enough. But I think definitely what you do there in that situation is just a simple split the army so it's pre-concaved. So you spread on kind of, so you're the one who's got the arc. And you'll just hold position. I think hold position is so important when you're using this sort of army. Do you find yourself using hold position much?
Yeah, actually quite a bit. Like if I want to stand to concave and just hold this area, I use it quite a bit.
Good. Just making sure. Little thing which could easily be forgotten. Okay, so you're going to go in the main, going to try and warp in there. Personally, warping in the main is always very tough. Oh my god. So many zealots, very nice. Because, you know, you could just get overcharged or shot down. But that is nice. Personally, I almost always, lately, love my reliable warp-ins, where I just warp into Zealots, like, over here. And then just A-move them in while the army is being distracted. Just because that way the Warp Prism never dies. You know, I can just keep it going over and over again. And it's super awesome. But yeah, I definitely think you needed to get more done earlier. Because you were behind. And when you're behind, either you're going to have to just take your own 5th and Turtle to Carriers really hard, or you really need to get something done. So as you start getting closer to max, you really should be like, move forward, take a position, look threatening, warp in a billion charge lots, maybe some DTs as well, and get going. I think we've already talked about that enough. I think, honestly, the most important thing here is how to stop falling behind in these games, right? I think games are always 1,000 times easier to look like a wizard if you're already ahead, or at the very least even, but you've been behind in both of these. So let's go back to this early stage. And let's look at this one more time, and let's just make sure we're totally clear. So in this case, we're up against a 1-base tech. You've built 2 Stalkers into expand into 2 more Stalkers. You still have no idea what tech it is. You do know it's not proxied. That's fine. You've got a Robo and a Twilight on the way. Yep. You are going to go for the double overcharge here in order to take down that Phoenix. Worth it. I like that. I think it's good. I think it's actually totally fine to do that. He's up a couple of workers on you here, interestingly. Maybe a slight gap in worker production early. Oh, he skipped the Mothership Core, that's why. Okay. Stargate player.
He also didn't get any gateway units, like he's still on 1 Stalker and like a Sentry or 2 Stalkers, I guess. Yeah.
So yeah, he kind of does need to go straight into this fast Robo and Immortal production so that he doesn't die to a random 2-base blink timing. Even then, he probably could have died to a random 2-base blink timing potentially, but I'm assuming he would have reacted if you were not taking a fast third. Alright, so at this point he is up 4 probes, so he's been just, slightly more consistent. It's about 3 probes. He's been slightly more consistent on probe production. Nothing major, but is always something to talk about. If you had an Immortal out, which you definitely could have had when this hit, yeah, I think that's it. I think Immortal production is going to make such a big difference for you. This is just my coaching in a nutshell. Same in PvZ, right? Make more Immortals.
Right, yeah, make more Immortals, yeah.
Really, really high level advice. You know, you couldn't get this anywhere else.
Do you recommend making like Immortals all the time during the game? Because I see a lot of pro gamers nowadays only get like 3 or 4 to like drop them with a Warp Prism, for example.
Yeah.
And then, like just mass Archon Zealot from there.
I was confused because charge lot styles were still something which were used a little bit earlier in Legacy, and people would make like 7 Immortals sometimes, and I'd be like, why? And it's good to see that my doubt as to why pros were doing that has finally been answered with the pros down the track who are better being like, no, this is actually dumb. There's no reason to do this. They just don't do enough damage to Zealots and Archons, right? Like, for the cost, they're not worth it.
Yeah.
I think having a few throughout your army is not bad. Like, they're tanky, they're a beastly unit. Obviously, they wreck Stalkers and enemy immortals. But yeah, they're just not that cost efficient, right? So I think stopping at maximum of about 5 or 6 immortals is great. I think like you did in the previous game with just 3 or 4, that's okay as well. I think just copy the pros on this one and follow what they've figured out is the best.
Do you
yeah.
like I guess we're just like talking
Yeah.
like 4 models then, I guess, or like not a lot of more.
Yeah, let's
'Cause I'm not sure, right?
let's
Like,
say 4.
I mean, yeah, 4 is probably a good number because then I can still like load some into my Warp Prism and still have like a couple in my army.
Yeah.
Because having no models in the army is also kind of scary, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they beef it up so much, and it's actually kind of nice
Yeah.
when you actually when you do like a nice concave and you kind of pull your charge lots back a little bit, and if your immortals actually end up kind of in the front line, tanking some damage, like it's so nice, right? You know, the way the fights go, sometimes the immortals are stuck at the back, the Archons are too far forward, and the chargelets all just kind of go forward, clump up, and your army's like so much less effective. But if you're kind of spread out in a bit of concave, the chargelets like a little bit further back, so they only charge like once the like a little bit into the fight rather than ahead of your army. You know, your army's so much better. So yeah, I think a few immortals is very nice. Let's just say 4 for now. But as someone who, like I said, I honestly have been watching so few PvPs, and the last one I watched was Stats SOS, which was not your regular PvP by any means. There's some very cool timings and some kind of silly mistakes from SOS. That DT game where he was just like killing him, and he's like, "You have no units."
Yeah, let's just like get Blink.
Yeah, I was a little bit tilted at that. I was like, stats, what? This is a mistake I make on ladder all the time. You're like, wow, I'm so good at this game. My opponent doesn't have any stuff. No, he doesn't have any stuff because he's making invisible fucking dudes. Get detection now. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, because of that,
I mean, it's always hard to copy like builds from GSL, I feel, or like PvP builds, because they just never do the same build twice. So you can never tell if it's actually a reaction or if they just do this all game.
Exactly. So I think the biggest points we've talked about so far, let me think. Is this actually a good plan for you fundamentally improving your PvP? And I'm just thinking about the theory of it, and generally, is this actually good? So, okay, potentially blocking people who are trying to do really greedy nexuses. We said, okay, we're going to adjust the probe scout on those larger maps. Sure. Only one observer at first. It's going to be definitely a change. Now, obviously, a side effect of that. If you go 1 observer, you build 3 immortals, you forget to build any other observers, your opponent goes mid-game DTs, you might have a really bad time. Because at the moment, you've been getting away with skimping on cannons, right? Me, I'm someone who almost always only builds 1 observer all game. That's why I've got to build 2 cannons at each base, not too late into the game. And I've got to be really on top of my hallucination and prism harassment scouts. Because if I see a DT shrine, it's like, bam, oh shit, I got to put those cannons down, right? Because you don't want to rush those cannons, right? It's such a waste of money if your opponent's not actually harassing you yet. So definitely balancing that is a problem you're going to have to just keep your eyes open for. I'm not saying worry too much about it. Maybe add that 2nd or 3rd observer a bit later. But for now, as a general rule, 1 observer into immortal production is going to keep you a lot safer. Taking your 3rd base a little bit later after you've saturated both the minerals and the gas on your natural, that should keep your 3rd a bit more reliable. I think definitely when you're starting out with this, as default, start playing out the pressure towards your opponent's 3rd that we were talking about. Like every game, obviously Stargate's a bit of a different story. You probably want to, because your 3rd's earlier, you're probably turtling a bit longer against Stargate and playing more to the later stages. But against, like in that game 1, get out there, do that push, try to deny their 3rd as much as possible, or at least put on some pressure, which enables the Warp Prism to get the damage done with the Adepts shading in. I feel like the Prism with the Adepts, when controlled well and used very nicely, like the number of games that can win is insane. I think it's something I focus on a lot because I look up to Showtime a lot as a player. He's a player who I learn a lot of my Protoss play from watching Showtime and asking Showtime questions and that sort of stuff. And he's a player, him and Neeb both, who I think last year when they were some of the most dominant players in the matchup, they would almost always rush a Warp Prism out, and you'd see 2 Adepts each with a half dozen kills. like 10, 12 probes over the course of the next few minutes. Like, it'd be this game-ending damage. And at their level, it doesn't work nearly as well anymore. Players have gotten better at stopping it. I think at your level, at my level, it's still definitely something that's very powerful. So in the first game, I noticed you were decent at focus firing the adepts, but just a little bit more craftiness with, like I said, shading adepts in from warped in outside while dropping in a different base. And also just being very quick at timing out the macro, look back just as the warp prism unloads those adepts, which you'd already queued up, click down, focus fire 3 probes, pick up, get out of there, go back to macroing. If you can get just a little bit of momentum with your first pressures like that, I think it's going to make a really big difference. Okay, cool. Did you have any other replays you wanted to look at? Or...
Not like really. I mean, I just brought 2. I thought that was a pretty good amount.
I think the other thing which we haven't really got a chance to look at the details of, and is more complicated than I will always make it sound, is the charge counter attacks, right? And the mid game. I think the biggest thing that's going to help you, like I said, is you getting to this stage without being behind. What we're seeing in these games is you're starting to get in your element and you're making reasonably good engagements and decisions. Reasonably. There's always room for improvement. But it's your opponent has carriers, and it's like, oh, fuck, you're out of time, So I think naturally you're going to start to win games more just by not being behind. But when it gets to this stage, there is a real art form to timing out those attacks, right? There are those situations where you're like, you know what? I'm behind. I'm going to go Mega YOLO. Like, I'm actually going to send 6 DTs into this base, 10 Zealots into that other base. When he pulls back to them, my main army's going to jump in and kill his 4th and then run out of there. Like you can do these crazy moves if you're behind. You can also do them if you're ahead. You can also just refine your stock standard. 12 Zealots run in while the main army's posturing at the front, and you're really looking for him to react. He reacts with his main army because he doesn't have warp-ins. Your main army jumps in and takes the engagement while he's kind of all clumped up and out of position. I think that's the real key stuff we should be looking for. Looking at the build order, keep in mind Double Forge is a bit greedy. So you are going to be doing it... When did we write down? We wrote down Double Forge just after the 4th and 5th gate, right? Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So 3rd Nexus, Double Forge, Templar Archives, 10 gates. Do watch out for big 3-base pushes. Where someone doesn't fully saturate a 3rd, but I think you should be okay against those. There's something you can kind of deal with as you get to them. Okay, cool. So I think we've done a pretty good little summary here. Dude, I'm impressed. I thought you were dead this game. Well done.
Yeah, like I think he just built carriers too early.
He's just missing.
That's actually a question that just popped up into my mind. Like, you like ever go for carriers? Because I feel like also having watched Neeb's PvP from DreamHack Montreal, like he almost always just gets the mothership with a fleet beacon and just never goes into carriers or Tempest, and he just always stays on this like kind of mass Archon mothership zealot composition.
I think as a general rule, I'm a big believer of learning StarCraft in stages, and I feel like I really like to perfect one stage before I go to the next. So for me, I always feel like there's so much art and beauty in your early game, in your zealot counters, and your mid game movement with these sort of compositions, that I think it's more fun, and it also makes sense that there's just more to improve on at this stage. I feel like when you start focusing on transitioning to the next stage, it's very easy to forget about all of the tiny things you should still be improving at this part of the game. And I think the early stages are the most important. If there's one problem I see with players on EU ladder who aren't the Neebs in Showtimes, is they try to play like Neeb in Showtime without having perfected the fundamentals up to that point. So everyone's rushing to Hive Tech. It's not just Protoss players. Everyone's rushing to Hive Tech. Everyone's rushing to carriers. Everyone's rushing to 3 or 4 bases. And the thing is, because there's not nearly as many cheeses and aggressive players on EU, like, these players, when they go on something like Korea, they just lose like 50 games in a row while they're getting used to the fact that there's all of these weird, quote-unquote, not good timing attacks that could kill them when they're doing these builds. So I think it's there's got to be a distinction in your mind between I'm playing macro and I'm just going to late game because there's no way to kill my opponent up to that point. So You know, you started out as an all-in player, right? You're a player timing based.
Right,
You started
totally.
as a player who goes and tries to kill his opponents. Just because you're trying to play a lot more macro now and work on your fundamentals doesn't mean you should just rush to late game. I think, yeah, copy Neeb's example. He loves to kill people when he has an advantage. It's like
Yeah,
greedy,
true.
reactive, defensive play into, okay, well, I'm going to push here, counterattack there. Oh, yeah, I can do it. Let's just kill you. Let's just kill you. Like he's never quite all in with his pushes, Neeb, but he will hit very strong timings. And yeah, I used to always get a bit confused because people would be like, oh, he's such a timing based player. You know, Neeb's timing attacks are so strong. And I was like, yeah, but he has more workers and bases than anyone else while hitting them. So, like,
Right,
he's
yeah.
always got a transition. It's just the fact that he's so good at getting ahead early on, playing these reactive, quote unquote, greedy styles, and that's why he can smash so hard with those timings. So, don't be afraid to just stick on this and really perfect it. And I think the more hunting for details you get, I think your experience as a timing oriented player you can put into action. Think of it at this
Right.
stage of the game, there's more going on. There's so many different things. It's easy to get distracted and go, oh, what do I focus on? Think back to when you're doing a 2-base Immortal all-in back in the day and how you just focus on the tiny details of, if I had this force field placed a little bit better, I think I could have taken this fight. Look for those tiny details within these big situations. So a lot of the time with this sort of army, it's, if my zealots were actually pulled back behind my army, or if I was on hold position and I held that choke point up here, like let's go back to that point earlier where you did that first massive zealot warp in. Where was that? It was like probably 12 minutes, I think. I think this is a really
Yeah,
good
around
example
12.
of where you maybe could have won the game, or at least got a lot of momentum and damage done. Right here. If you held that position I was talking about, and then 10 zealots come in, you cancel this base, and you get on that natural. And if he's distracted and microing at the front and he's feeling the pressure there, he might be even slower to warp in. So even if you did the warp in the main base, maybe he's slower to counteract it with his own warp in because he's feeling the pressure of you sitting right outside his base, right? And then suddenly his zealots are only halfway done when yours are finished warping in. You kill all of his zealots without sustaining any damage here. The stalkers go down. Suddenly he's going, shit, how do I deal with this? And what does he do? He's going to lose all the probes in his main. He's going to lose some tech. You're going to potentially stop the carrier transition. Because these zealots and stalkers coming back up here, they don't get back here. Like, even in this situation, if his army had to stay at the front, you would have done so much damage with these zealots. So just look for those little edges and say, you know what? Sometimes you got to be a bit ballsy with this army. Hold that forward position. And think about that Mech Depot game where you were the one on the back foot and you're like, oh god, everything has to be at the front right now. You want to put your opponent in that mindset every single game you play with this style.
Alright, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
I love the 2-2 upgrades, by the way, making me really happy. Especially if you play people who play single forge, your zealots will wreck their zealots. So the
Yeah,
more you
that's-
can
that's
invest
what I
in the
think.
zealot counters, like it's just going to be so worth, man.
Oh, by the way, are you still like editing the same document we used for the PvZ sessions? Or
Yeah,
did you make-
sorry, I noticed you don't have it open. I should link that to you. There we go. Make sure you bookmark it. Bookmark it so you can
Right.
find it nice and easy. Make sure it doesn't ever get lost to the ravages of the internet. You can always ask me, of course, for a link to it as well. I can always find that, but it should be nice and easy. Cool. All right, GG is well played, man. You know, we're basically used up an hour, but I think we've covered a lot of key points. So, you know, I'm gonna look at chat and see if anyone else has any really good points, because occasionally there is like some Gold League bloody wisdom that actually comes out in chat, and it's like actually like, holy shit, that's really smart. And the guy's like, yeah, I'm in Silver League, but I watch a lot. So I'm just gonna read through that. Have a think. Read through those notes and try to see if there's any questions that pop into your head so we can clarify any information here and just kind of make sure everything makes sense for you and that we've given you the hopefully good plan that we're aiming to give here going forward in the PvPs. Okay.
Alright, so one thing
Yep.
actually that we've talked about in the first game is the double prism. Do you think that's something I should always just get in the late game, like just get a second prism? Or is it like a little bit safer to just stay on one prism
I think if you
and
can
like just
afford it,
focus on being really active with this one?
if you can afford it, then it's great, but you definitely don't need it. I think just
Okay.
good posturing with your main army and having the warp prism is really good. I think if you lose your warp prism, you don't have a second one. Obviously, it's a bit of a nightmare, especially if you're not doing a carrier transition because you're like, oh, there's like a full minute and a half now, which gives him a big bit of breathing room to potentially get up to carriers, which is very, very scary.
Right.
Okay. Yep. So I think that's going to be very situational. Some games you're like, yeah, I've got money. My robo's not doing anything. Let's do it. I heard adept equals good unit. Yeah, fantastic Twitch chat. Thanks, Terran players.
What a Twitch chat GM, man. Yeah, but I think that's pretty much like everything. I just looked through the notes and everything seems pretty clear. And we talked about it a lot as well.
Cool. I'm here for the GM coaching too, was what you were saying earlier. Indeed you are. Nice. You're currently just outside of GM, right? I think you're like 55?
Yeah, like I'm having a little bit of a rough time on ladder. Part of that is being PvP. But I like hop in and out of it every now and then.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I think it's always so hard, but embracing the moments where you drop down on ladder and saying, you know what, this is a great chance for learning is the hardest thing to do, and it's the best feeling when you can fully embrace that mindset. I was recently like 50, I got down to about 5200 MMR with my Terran, and then after just grinding macro practice, and I lost every single macro practice game for like 20, 25 games or something. But I was like, no, I'm just focusing on macro because I know that's my weakness. I'm just like, I'm over microing units. I don't have good rhythm. And then bam, I beat a few 5.8, 6K players. I know it's NA ladder, so shit on it as much as you want. But, I'm actually feeling very comfortable and evenly matched against 5,800 players now. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like it's so good because I'm actually screwing up an engagement and I've got a new army to replace it. Whereas before I was just playing so much like must win every single fight because my macro is so trash, and just feels good. Yeah. Good to, I dropped down and I was getting wrecked by 5K players, while I was kind of focusing on the new things. And the egos in the back of your mind shouting like, you're so much better than these people. If you're losing to them, then you must be a real piece of shit, and then you kind of remind yourself like, no, it's such a fast-paced game. A lot of the time you've just got to get muscle memory down and work on those fundamentals and kind of rebuild in a new direction.
Yeah, and always like, I think entitlement in StarCraft is just pretty dangerous, as you've mentioned. It's really easy to just say, oh yeah, I'm supposed to win against that guy, when he actually just played better than you. And kind of like sometimes that's pretty hard to like accept and then still just go and continue to practice. But I guess what you said is pretty true. Like improvement is always really hard to notice, I guess, in StarCraft.
Exactly.
Unless you actually like do really well on ladder, which doesn't happen unless you're like Showtime or Need.
Yep. Exactly. And we can only hope to be such gods, but we can definitely work in that direction one step at a time. So good coaching session, mate. I look forward to seeing how hopefully the slightly delayed third, bit better immortal production, all those other little factors work into the play. Yeah, let me know how it goes, and hope to see a big boost in your win percentage. Maybe not in the next couple games while you're changing up the order of things. As always, expect losses when you're getting used to, I'm building immortals instead of observers. I've got a bit less map vision, and maybe I'm surprised by this or that. But once you get more comfortable with it, it should start feeling more natural, and you should start slaying it.
All right, great, perfect, man.
All right, have a great night. Let me know how the practice goes. I'll catch you next time, mate.
Yeah, man, thanks for the session. Bye-bye.
See ya. All right. I do really apologize, guys, for having the overlay up for about 2 minutes earlier during it. We were out of game for so long. I was like, well, it looks dumb looking at this screen. Let's change it. But then I got really caught up in the fascinating discussion we were having, and I was like, ugh, ugh, oh no, oh no.